The sun hadn't yet risen over the sleepy town of Crestwood, but the tension in the air was already thick enough to slice with a knife. On a dimly lit street corner, a woman in a leather jacket stood with her hands raised, her voice steady but edged with fury. "You're making a mistake," she said, her eyes locked on the officer looming over her. His knuckles whitened around his flashlight, its beam shaking slightly as he barked orders. He didn't know her, not yet. But in seconds, everything would change. A block away, a crowded bus rattled through the pre-dawn gloom, its passengers slumped in exhaustion. Near the back, a lanky black teen named Jamal glanced up from his phone, noticing the pregnant woman clinging to a pole, her face pale. Without a word, he stood, nodding toward the empty seat. Her grateful smile faded as she glanced at the note in her purse, her fingers tightening around it like a secret she couldn't hold much longer. 2 stories. 2 collisions of fate. And by sunrise, nothing in Crestwood would ever be the same. Let's start with the cop. Officer Dan Harlan had a reputation, one he wore like a badge of honor. Quick to snap, slow to listen, he'd built his career on keeping order in neighborhoods that didn't look like his. But tonight, his target wasn't some faceless stranger. When the woman refused to ID herself, his temper snapped. The punch came fast, a split-second decision he'd regret for the rest of his life. She stumbled back, her lip split, but her glare never wavered. "You're done," she spat, reaching into her jacket. His radio crackled to life before she even pulled out her badge. All units respond to reports of an officer-involved altercation. Chief Daniels is on scene. The blood drained from Harlan's face. Chief, his chief. The woman he'd just struck wiped her mouth, her voice ice cold. "You want my name now, officer?" Meanwhile, Jamal's heart pounded as the pregnant woman hesitated, staring at the seat he'd offered. "You sure?" she asked, her voice softer than he expected. He shrugged, trying to hide the ache in his legs after his double shift at the grocery store. She sank into the seat with a relieved sigh, rummaging in her bag. For a moment, he thought she'd hand him cash, a reward he'd politely decline. But what she passed him wasn't money. It was a folded slip of paper, creased and slightly damp from her grip. "Open it later," she whispered, her eyes suddenly urgent. As the bus lurched to a stop, she vanished into the shadows, leaving Jamal clutching the note like a live wire. Back on the street, Harlan's knees hit the pavement, his voice cracking as he begged Chief Daniels for mercy. But her phone was already buzzing, a frantic call from dispatch. Another emergency, another choice. "Get up," she ordered, staring down at him. This isn't over. And it wasn't. Because as Jamal unfolded the note under a flickering street lamp, his breath caught. Scrawled in hurried cursive were 7 words that would drag him into Chief Daniels' storm. "Tell the chief they're framing her. Tonight." But why him? Why now? And as the first rays of sunlight pierced the sky, 2 questions hung over. Crestwood unanswered? What happens when the hunter becomes the prey? And what's the price of a single act of kindness in a world determined to make you regret it? Stay tuned. The reckoning is just beginning. The flickering street lamp buzzed like a trapped hornet above Jamal's head as he stared at the note, the words burning into his retinas. "Tell the chief they're framing her. Tonight." His throat went dry. The chief, as in Police Chief Daniels. The same woman his older brother, Malik, had cursed under his breath for months after his wrongful arrest. Jamal's fingers trembled. Why him? And who the hell was they? The bus had long since disappeared, leaving him alone on the curb. For a second, he considered crumpling the note and pretending he'd never seen it. But the woman's face, pale, sweating, her hand shaking as she'd pressed the paper into his palm, haunted him. She'd looked scared, not just tired. Scared. Across town, Chief Evelyn Daniels paced the cramped interrogation room, her split lip throbbing with every step. The stale coffee smell and flickering fluorescent light did nothing to calm her nerves. Harlan sat slumped in a chair across the table, his uniform rumpled, eyes bloodshot. He hadn't spoken since she'd cuffed him. Not a word. but his silence was louder than any confession. She knew his type. Bullies who crumbled the second their power got flipped. Still, something felt off too easy. Harlan wasn't just some rogue cop. He'd been reckless, sure, but striking a superior? That wasn't ego, that was panic. "Who put you up to this?" she finally asked, leaning against the edge of the table. Her voice was calm, but her mind raced. Last week, an anonymous tip had warned her about evidence tampering in the Cartwright drug case. Now this? Harlan's jaw twitched, but he stared at the floor. "You think this ends with you?" she pressed. "You're a pawn, and pawns get sacrificed first." His head snapped up, a flicker of fear in his eyes. "I didn't." The door burst open, cutting him off. "Chief!" Officer Ruiz, her youngest recruit, hovered in the doorway, breathless. "There's a situation at the evidence locker. You need to see this." Jamal's sneakers slapped against the pavement as he jogged toward the precinct. The note crumpled in his fist. Shouldn't care. Cops had never done a damn thing for him or Malik. But that woman on the bus, she'd looked at him like he was a lifeline, like she was the one drowning. The precinct loomed ahead, its windows glowing like predators. He slowed, suddenly aware of the squad cars lining the street. What if they didn't believe him? What if they thought he was involved? His phone buzzed. Malik. Again. He'd already missed 3 calls. "Where you at?" Malik barked when Jamal picked up. "Ma's freaking out. She said you never came home after work." "I'm handling something," Jamal muttered, eyeing the precinct's front doors. "Handling what?" "Jamal, don't tell me you're—" A hand clamped down on Jamal's shoulder. He whirled, nearly dropping the phone. A tall man in a wrinkled suit stood behind him, his smile too wide, too calm. "Jamal Carter," the man said, flashing a badge. "Detective Morrow. Mind coming inside for a chat?" The evidence locker reeked of bleach. Chief Daniels frowned at the row of overturned storage bins, files scattered like confetti. "What am I looking at, Ruiz?" "The Cartwright case files," Ruiz whispered. "They're gone, all of them, and the security feed from tonight." He swallowed. "It's erased." Daniels' stomach dropped. "The Cartwright case, the one that had put a city councilman's son behind bars for trafficking. The same case someone had tried to sabotage last week." She knelt, sifting through the debris. A glint of metal caught her eye beneath a crumpled report. A key. Small, silver, unmarked. Not police issue. She pocketed it just as her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your left desk drawer. Hurry." Her office felt colder than usual. The drawer stuck as she yanked it open. Inside, a single photo. Her standing outside the precinct yesterday, talking to Malik Carter? The kid they'd arrested for vandalism last spring. Why would Chief? Ruiz appeared in the doorway, pale. "That teen from the Cartwright trial, Jamal Carter? He's here, Detective Morrow's questioning him." Daniels froze. Carter. The same last name as Malik. A brother. Her fingers brushed the key in her pocket. None of this was a coincidence. "Detective." Morrow's office smelled like mint gum and paranoia. Jamal shifted in his chair, the note now hidden in his sock. Morrow hadn't mentioned it. Instead, he'd asked about Malik, about the anti-cop rallies Malik had attended, about whether Jamal had ever helped his brother send a message. "I just gave a lady my seat," Jamal said, clenching his fists under the table. "That's all." Morrow leaned back, his chair creaking. "Funny, because that lady? She's gone. No security cams caught her face, almost like she vanished." He slid a grainy bus photo across the table. Jamal's stomach lurched. The woman's seat, the one he'd given her, was empty, as if she'd never existed. "Now," Morrow said, "let's talk about that note." Harlan's hands shook as he scrolled through the texts on his burner phone. "Get rid of the key, or your kid's tuition money disappears." His vision blurred. They'd promised him a promotion, a way out of his ex-wife's medical debt. But now he was trapped. The key, he'd planted it in the evidence locker himself, but when he'd gone back to retrieve it, it was gone. Daniel stood outside the interrogation room, watching Jamal through the one-way glass. The boy's face was all defiance, but his knees bounced under the table. A scared kid. Just like Malik. Just like her own son. Miles away at college. Oblivious to the storm brewing. She pulled out the key again. It felt heavy, familiar, then it hit her. The motel. Ridgeway Motel, room 214. The keycard design matched the one she'd confiscated in the Cartwright raid. The same motel where the councilman's son had stashed his drugs. But that place had been boarded up for months. Her phone buzzed. Another. Text. They're watching. Trust no one. Across the room, Ruiz approached holding a coffee. Everything okay, Chief? She forced a smile. Fine. Just follow up on the security footage again. As he walked away, she noticed it. The faint outline of an earpiece under his collar. Jamal's heart pounded as Morrow circled him. Last chance. What did the note say? I don't know what you're... The door flew open. Chief. Daniel stood there, her gaze sharp enough to cut steel. He's done here. Morrow stiffened. With all due respect, Chief, this is my... I said. He's... done. She stepped aside, holding the door open. Jamal didn't hesitate, so they walked down the hall. She kept her voice low. The note. What did it say? Jamal hesitated. Why should I trust you? She stopped, turning to face him. Because right now, I'm the only one asking questions. Everyone else, they're just covering their tracks. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang, then another, and another. The lights went out. In the chaos, no one noticed Ruiz slipping out the back exit, or the figure waiting for him in the alley, a woman in a hoodie, her face hidden. Is it done? She asked. Ruiz nodded, handing over a flash drive. The key, where it needs to be. The woman pulled down her hood. Streaks of faded pink dyed her hair. The same woman from the bus. Ruiz frowned. Why'd you involve the kid? She smiled, glancing at the precinct's glowing windows. Because Daniels trusts pain, and that boy, he's got pain she'll recognize. Back inside, emergency lights bathed the hallway in red. Jamal pressed against the wall, the chief's grip tight on his arm. Stay close, she muttered, her other hand on her holster. Shouting echoed from the lobby. Glass shattered, and then a single gunshot rang out.